Hey guys, it's Proulx here, and today we're going to be talking about the newest album from Tabby, peachfuzz. Tabby is a Wisconsin-turned-Minnesota rapper, and this is his second full-length project, following up 2017's White Trash. If you're not familiar with who Tabby is, he is a YouTuber, he is a reactor, he is a music reviewer of sorts. If you're not familiar with him, I would throw him up with his contemporaries such as Big Quint and Sean C. and Miami and I don't know, that little kid that gets his dad to listen to JPEG Mafia. But today we're talking about Tabby. He's got about 80,000 subscribers. I think he's just below that, if I'm not mistaken, on YouTube. And he's really expressed before that he doesn't want YouTubing to be the thing that defines him. He wants to use it as a platform to release his music. And of course, he took advantage of that last year with White Trash. And honestly, that album really does have its issues, but I do see the start of something great. I can name a bunch of tracks off the top of my head that I have come back to on that record. I could think of Cranston, I could think of Yellow Belly, I could think of Mahogany, I could think of You Mammy, Doozy, the closing track, the title track, if you know what I'm saying. There's some good gems on there where Tabby's personality really comes through in the music being made. He showed a lot of lyrical prowess on that album. It turns out while he's definitely more of your just kind of braggadocious guy, he's not gonna always be a guy that really spills out his life story. He actually does quite a bit on that record. He does actually open up quite a bit about his personal life and his issues. However, my major issue was not with Tabby himself necessarily. It had more to do with the production on the record and the mixing and mastering that was done for that release. The production done by this producer by the name of OLSC for the most part. Tabby seemed very adamant about saying hey, this guy, this 14, 15, 16-year-old, I forget what your age is, you're young, whatever, this super young producer, he produced all my beats, he's amazing, go follow him, he's great. And while I did actually enjoy OLSC's Traveler tape he put out later in the year last year, actually I really liked that, some really good textured production on that tape that really kind of seems a little bit more lo-fi, but it did have some pretty interesting samplings of verses from various artists like Jay-Z and Eminem and other guys. I just didn't see that great production work, those great textures coming through in the production on White Trash for the most part. It seemed like a lot of the beats were kind of haphazardly thrown together. There's a bunch of beats on there where either it just seems so wonky or it seems so kind of rudimentary at points, to the point where it hurts the song. Also, the mixing and mastering on that album seemed very rushed, very overly rushed. There wasn't a lot of time put into this record, which I think Tabby has said that is actually true. There wasn't a lot of time put into that record, and it shows in the mixing and mastering. The record just sounds kind of a little too amateurish for my tastes, and it hurts the quality of each track. And also, another thing that kind of had me holding back on that record was just the songwriting. I felt like the songwriting was a little was shaky at a lot of points, where Tabby writes these really long hooks, in the style of Mac Miller, for example, but he's not really as good of a songwriter as Mac Miller is yet. And also Mac Miller, in my opinion, while I do have a lot of music by him that I think is really good, he can get kind of into this space where when he's writing these long hooks, it doesn't feel like he's really actually writing something catchy or something memorable, where he's more just trying to take up space in the track. And that's kind of the way it comes off with Tabby sometimes, or just where the hooks are so low in effort or just so nothing that I'm not even interested. And that happens a few times on White Trash for me. However, I did see the potential in that record, and I thought if the production was better, if the mixing and mastering, if it just sounded a little bit more professional, that I could see myself really liking a Tabby project into the future. And thus I got really excited for peachfuzz when it was announced, and then we got that prequel single in the middle of the summer, which I thought was actually a big step up for Tabby, not just because it's a bit of a stylistic change for him, it's more of a smooth pop, rap, R&B fusion that sounds like, I don't know, a B-side off of Tyler, the Creator's Loverboy. But overall, it just sounded way more professional. Tabby's singing voice sounded better on this cut. His performance sounded better. I was actually kind of impressed by it. However, it does not appear on this new full-length record. And then I saw all over his social media, Instagram, Twitter, that, hey, peachfuzz is gonna drop on December 7th, and then on November 30th, literally a week before the album came out, we got the lead single from it, Sequel, along with a music video. And Sequel is the opening track to this record, and it's really a fantastic opener for this thing. It really sets the tone for this record perfectly and really introduces the basic stuff that you need to know going into this album, where you get these two personas, two sides of Tabby, it seems, where you get Loverboy, who's the more sensual, the more sensitive, the more soft side of Tabby that dominates the back end of this record, and you get Orange Boy, who dominates the front end of the record and is much more abrasive, rapper, in your face, still some singing, but nowhere near as much, and just generally a more like badass demeanor. However, they're both incredibly braggadocious and egotistical. And that definitely comes through on the track Sequel. I mean, both sides of this personality, well, they definitely do have completely different tones to the way that they're rapping. They're both throwing out these really awesome shots at the rap industry, at the current trends of rappers today. One of the Loverboy verses on this thing ends with the line, "I know you fellas are getting dick sucked, stop making it a skit," which is honestly an odd thing that I just realized is very, very common. I mean, even Anderson .Paak did it on his new album, and yeah, that's a good point. And then there's some shots being thrown in Orange Boy's verses, of course, where he talks about like white rappers who wear golf and just try to spit as fast as they can. Or that one line where he says, and screw all these B.O.B.s, if the world is flat, then so is Cardi. There's so many little gems that I could pick out of this track, as well as I love the freaking beat on this thing, which he has kind of thrown at us a bunch of times in promos. But I actually really liked this instrumental with the rapping over top of it. It makes a lot more sense now than just hearing the beat over and over. And that beat switch in the back end with the rumbling bass and the trap style percussion that really just sounds like a redone version of Who Dat Boy by, you know, the Who Dat Boy beat, Tyler, the Creator. I mean, like right down to like the string samples being used in the beat to create this really eerie, tense atmosphere. I mean, it's all there, but I mean that in the best way possible. It's really just a step up for Tabby in a lot of ways, and I appreciated it a ton. And it got me excited to see what he was gonna offer us on this album, and now I'm just really excited to see, is this gonna be a big improvement? Is there gonna be an improvement for the entirety of the album? And lo and behold, there is a bona fide improvement on here. This record sounds as a whole a lot better than White Trash, like a lot better, like miles better. The production from OLSC, who again is producing this thing nearly from front to back. A couple different people take on production credits on this thing, but mostly it is by OLSC. The production on this thing is much better, much more solid, much better textures. Like, still, I wish that there was a little bit more texture to some of these beats, but I understand that maybe they didn't want to use a lot of samples or something. That's why there's maybe not as much, you know, textures coming from the samples on here. It sounds like a lot more like self-made textures and synthesizers and keyboard sounds on this thing, but still they sound a lot better than the ones that were used on White Trash. I could name a ton of tracks where there's a beat highlight. The instrumental is a highlight of the track. The beat on the track Airmax 97, which is one of my favorite tracks on the record, I mean, it has this huge 90s vibe, this huge 90s pop rap sort of vibe, and like it goes over really well. Like it's a great instrumental for what Tabby does on top of it. And Tabby just absolutely murders this track. Like, my goodness, he has really improved his flow overall. Like, he sounds a lot more slick in his flows than he has in the past. Or, you know, doesn't feel like he's constantly stopping and starting his flow on this thing. He just sounds a lot more comfortable on this record, and this is one of the best examples of that. Also, I really love the chorus on this thing a lot, where he literally just kind of talks about, you know, he could have been bigger in the 90s because he would have probably fit in a little bit better, but he also says, you know, screw a pop song, screw the radio. He doesn't do it for that. He basically does it for himself. He does it for his own art, and you know what? I appreciate that a ton. The following track, Happy Meal, another one of my favorites on the record, has one of the grossest instrumentals I've heard in a while. It's like the boom bappiest version of like a beat off of Mac Miller's Faces. You know how that record had some organ sounds on it? We get that here too. On this beat, you get lots of these organ sounds, but they just sound gnarly. The organ chords and the drums on this thing just sound nasty. And another really wordy hook from Tabby on this thing, but it kind of works, especially with that proclamation of the cat's out the bag now, right at the beginning of the hook. I mean, it's so ear-grabbing, and it just gets me, it just kind of works on this track. I don't understand why, but it just works for me on this track, a lot like the way I feel about some of Mac Miller's hooks. Some of them just work for me, and this is a good example of that. Not only that, but it's just, I love Tabby's passion on this track, as well as on nearly every track here. I really love the passionate delivery of Tabby. It's creating something that's a lot more unique and something where you actually want to listen to the rapper, you know, when they're actually like trying to rap and actually putting some of their heart into the bars. I like that feeling when I'm listening to a rap song or a rap record, and that's definitely the vibe I'm getting off of this. The Mask Off interlude is this really nice kind of breaking point where you kind of see the transition from Orange Boy to the Loverboy side, and I mean, it's just an epic instrumental. I mean, it is just so triumphant, so feel good, really kind of carries the torch of the message of the track, where you literally feels like Loverboy is talking to Orange Boy, saying you don't have to put up that front, you don't have to act out just to seem tough, you can just talk to me. And that's really the vibe that I get off of this thing. I mean, like, it's just such a feel-good, like it's opening up, you're getting opened up to the Loverboy side of the record. However, with the Loverboy side of the record, we do kind of see an issue come in, at least for me, there's an issue here, and that is with Tabby singing, unfortunately. Now, I know a lot of you guys are gonna, if this review gets any views, you're gonna be like, dude, you're stupid, Tabby is great, he's great at singing, you're just being a bum. And don't get me wrong, I don't think he has a bad voice. I just praised how I love his passion and the sound of his voice. I do actually really like it. However, when he's constantly singing, the whininess of his voice at times, because he does have a high pitch to his voice. It's not like I'm making a revolutionary statement by saying that. And I just feel like it wears on you when you're going into these tracks where he's singing from the beginning to the end with no breaks, and he's supposed to be the star of the show. It's not like I'm supposed to be focusing on the production here, or it's not like he's downplaying it a little bit, or he's kind of making it sound a little smoother. He's just kind of laying it all out there. And while I do appreciate that, it does create some tracks on this back end that I'm not as big of a fan of on this record, unfortunately. Like, for example, the track Loverboy, which actually features a indie rock group, I guess, or just a band from the Minneapolis, Minnesota area called Author. And I mean, they do a pretty good job on this instrumental. I mean, it's well produced, it's well performed. It does sound kind of like some dance, like some disco, some dance rock from the 70s or something. I don't know, that's kind of what it gives me, kind of a 70s vibe from this thing, but kind of a funk vibe too. But I'm just not that enthralled by the songwriting here, by Tabby's really kind of whiny voice. It's literally, it kind of gets on my nerves when he's really just belting these high notes. And it's just a little much. Like, it's not making me want to come back and revisit this track. And then on the track Rosegold, where you just get an electric guitar and Tabby's voice, that's the entirety of the song. It sounds like just a total like Frank Ocean worship song. Like, it's just like, oh, bow down to Frank Ocean. He made this style popular. And while I do love myself some Frank Ocean, I think he's great, hearing Tabby do a Frank Ocean impression on here, while his voice actually doesn't sound half bad on here, it's not, I'm not gonna say that it's amazing. I'm not gonna say that it's blowing my mind or anything. Like, it's just, it's passable. You know, it's passable. And if I'm gonna be nitpicking a little bit further on this thing, I'm gonna name some of the tracks that I didn't like on the Orange Boy side of things. The track Orange Boy, for example, while I don't think this track is bad, I don't mind the beat, I don't mind the hook, I don't mind Tabby's verse on this thing. I just wish that there was just more to it, you know? It just feels like a little, like, you know, there could have been more here, and it just feels like it was cut short for the sake of being cut short. And on the track Adam, while I do appreciate the nice change in tone where it's a little bit more low key, I do appreciate Tabby's verses on here, which are a lot more personal and kind of diving into his psyche, what he's going through, how he kind of puts up this front or kind of avoids the things that are, you know, he should be taking care of, but he's not taking care of them, kind of, and then he uses this refrain of, you know, sorry about the peach fuzz, been meaning to shave. Like, he's been meaning to get rid of these, like, things that are covering up or things that he really needs to get done, but he's just not doing them. And I can appreciate that. However, it does feel like a little bit too much of a B-side from Earl Sweatshirt's I Don't Like Shit, I Don't Go Outside. Not saying that's a bad thing. I mean, I love that album, but it just kind of feels a little, you know, just not good enough in terms of the production sounds on here, especially that synth lead. I mean, sure, I bet some people think that synth lead is awesome. It's literally off key, and it literally just wears at my eardrums after a while, you know, listening to this thing a few times through the album. I mean, it's just not that appealing to me. If that was changed, I would see myself maybe liking this track a little bit more, but still, I just wish that there was more to it. I do like the parts in it other than that synth lead. I just wish that it just sounded a little bit more original, even though I do, again, like the parts that make up most of it. However, that's kind of it for tracks I don't like on this thing. Getting back to the album, the last two tracks I think end out the record really, really well. I mean, the track South Dakota, probably one of Tabby's best songs yet. Like, literally one of his best written songs, best performed, most interesting concepts in a song. I mean, like, it's a great track. One of OLSC's best beats too. It's so atmospheric. It has this cloud rap R&B feel that I love a lot. And Tabby's singing on this track is great. I mean, it's not over the top. It didn't need to be over the top. He nails this track, I think, to a T. He just sounds smooth and comfortable on this thing. He's using the beat as therapy, you know, and that really comes through in the lyrics as well. That seem to be talking about just not being satisfied with life, like there's just something blocking him. He names a girl. He, you know, talks about why are you always running, like he seems like he's, again, running away from his problems a little bit on this thing, which is, again, was addressed on the track Adam a little bit. And I just found it to be one of his best tracks. I mean, catchy also. Some of his best melodies come through on this track too. I mean, it's a great track. It glides right into the final track, SHEESH, on this thing, which is an absolute banger. Features both Loverboy and Orange Boy doing a verse on here, and I think it actually works out really well. Again, another really wordy hook that just so happens to work out well. The beat on here, the beat switch at the end was great. Again, OLSC showing a lot of improvement in his production on this thing. And I guess if I haven't named any other track on here, I would have to name the track Waverunner 700, which has this awesome 90s R&B feel. I love Tabby's flow on it. Again, another track where his singing is actually, I find it really enjoyable. Also, great little instrumental interlude that guides out the track very nicely. I don't know, I just found that track to be great as well. And overall, I would say this is a big improvement on White Trash. While I did enjoy White Trash, there was a lot of issues that I had with it. It just didn't sound that professional. It sounded a little half-baked. However, this thing sounds a lot more put together. It sounds a lot more ironed out. He ironed out the kinks. He cut this thing down to what he thought was the best set of 11 tracks that he could get. Below and behold, you got this really solid record. Is it great? I wouldn't say so. I think there's a few potholes here just in terms of songwriting, just in terms of the production not being always amazing to me. However, there's a lot to love on this thing. This is a huge improvement for Tabby, and I'm very, very happy with what he's delivered on this record. I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, I think I'm feeling like a 7.9. I would love to give it an 8, but it's so close. Like, literally, if Tabby can clean up some of his hooks a little bit more, if he can meld his singing a little bit better into the tracks, more consistently better into his tracks, because he does find a great spot for his singing voice on quite a few tracks here. I just wish that it was executed a little bit better. I wish that the songwriting was a little bit better. I wish the track listing was a little more consistent, like just a little tweaks here and there. And I think Tabby has a great record in him. I think this is a really good record. I just don't think it's a great record. And I think that on the next one, I'm gonna be even more excited if this is what he's delivering on his second project. I think that this is just the sign that Tabby really is meant to be an artist. And I really hope that we get a great record out of him in the future. Great job, Tabby. I don't love it, but I think it's really good. And I hope you continue to make music into the future, man. So that is it. Thank you guys for watching. I'm sorry for how bad the lighting got halfway through this thing. Like the light, you always use natural light, and because I live in Manitoba, the sun is going down. But before it completely goes away, let me just say a few things. If you want to check out my new single, Normal, which I just put out a little while ago, as well as 3 of my other projects that I put onto streaming platforms, there are links in the description to Apple Music and Spotify. It's also on Google Play. It's also on YouTube Music. It's also on Tidal. It's also on a bunch of other things as well. I think it's on iTunes as well. It's on everything. So if you want to go check out some of my music, links in the description, go check it out. Also, an announcement. I will be doing a year-end lists. 2 year-end lists for 2018. I'll be doing my top 20 albums of the year. I'll also be doing my top 20 songs of the year, not singles, songs of the year. That hopefully will be coming out before the end of the year. It might end up coming out in January, but yes, that is something that is definitely coming out soon. Keep your eyes open for that. Also going to be putting out hopefully some promotional material for my upcoming record, promoting it. I will not tell you guys the name, but Normal, my new single, is going to be on that record, and I think you guys are really gonna like it. I think it's one of my best albums yet, so give it a try. And look out for promotional material, music videos, that kind of thing. Other than that, I have nothing else to say. My name is Joe Proulx. This is Joe Proulx Music Reviews. Tabby, peachfuzz, and I am out.